Kang Daehyun stood at the observation window, staring at the thing that should not exist. The archive floated in the void like a monument to impossibility. It was massive beyond comprehension, larger than any moon, darker than the space around it. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing faintly with a light that seemed to come from nowhere. He had been studying dead civilizations for 15 years, but nothing prepared him for this. The archive was old, not old like ancient ruins on Earth, old like the universe itself. The scientists said it was 12 billion years old, maybe older. Every known civilization was young compared to it. Daehyun pressed his hand against the cold window. 3 decades. For 30 years, the greatest minds in the Galactic Coalition tried to understand this thing. They sent probes. They fired weapons. They broadcast messages in every known language. The archive ignored them all. It just floated there, silent and waiting, still staring at it. Park Mina walked up beside him, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one. Her dark eyes reflected the archive's faint glow. "You've been here 2 weeks and I haven't seen you sleep properly once." "Hard to sleep when you're looking at the biggest mystery in the galaxy," Daehyun said. He sipped the coffee. It was terrible, like all station coffee. "What do we actually know about it?" Mina shrugged. "Not much more than when they found it. The surface is made of something we can't identify. Not metal, not stone, not any element on our charts. Scanners just return noise. It doesn't respond to anything we throw at it. And those symbols," she pointed at the glowing marks. "They might be writing. They might be decoration. We don't know." "Someone built it," Daehyun said quietly. "Someone wanted to say something. You don't build something this big for no reason. Maybe they're all dead. Maybe we're trying to read a tombstone." Daehyun shook his head. "Tombstones are for remembering. This is different. This is for communication." The door hissed open. Hwang Taeyang entered, carrying a datapad. The engineer looked tired, his usually neat hair disheveled. "Dr. Kang, Dr. Park, we're having another meeting. Ambassador Velthax wants to discuss new approaches." They followed Taeyang to the conference room. The space was crowded with representatives from a dozen species. Ambassador Velthax stood at the head of the table, his mantis-like body clicking impatiently. Beside him, Dr. Rixalan adjusted his translation device with delicate tentacles. "We are wasting time and resources," Velthax announced. His translated voice was sharp. 30 years of study, thousands of attempts. We have learned nothing. The Council is considering abandoning this project." Murmurs filled the room. Daehyun leaned forward. "We can't give up. This structure predates everything we know. The knowledge inside could change everything." "If there is anything inside," Velthax countered. "We have no proof this is anything more than a natural formation with unusual properties." Dr. Rixalan's tentacles waved in disagreement. "The symbols are too regular to be natural. There is intelligence here. We simply lack the key to unlock it." For 3 hours they debated new scanning methods, different communication attempts, chemical analysis, quantum probes. Everything had been tried. Everything had failed. Daehyun listened, frustration building in his chest. They were thinking too hard. Too complicated. "What if it's simple?" he said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. "We've tried every advanced method we have. What if the archive wants something basic? The symbols on the hull? Have we tried just reading them as text?" Rixalan's tentacles curled thoughtfully. "We have attempted linguistic analysis. The patterns do not match any known language structure. But they might match an unknown one," Daehyun insisted. "Let me try. Give me a team and a shuttle. Let me examine the symbols up close." Velthax considered this. "Very well. But this is the last attempt. If you find nothing, the project ends." 2 days later, Daehyun floated in a spacesuit next to the archive's hull. Mina and Taeyang accompanied him in the shuttle. Up close, the structure was even more impressive. The surface was perfectly smooth except for the symbols. They pulsed with that strange inner light, shifting through colors that human eyes were not meant to see. Daehyun activated his scanner and began photographing the symbols. Thousands of them covered this section alone. He worked methodically, cataloging each mark. Hours passed. His suit's air supply dropped to 50%. "We should head back." Taeyang's voice crackled in his helmet. "You need rest and we need to analyze what you've collected." "Just a few more," Daehyun said. He moved along the hull, one gloved hand trailing across the surface for balance. The symbols seemed to pulse faster as he approached them. Or maybe he was imagining it. Space did strange things to perception. Then he saw it. A pattern. The symbols were not random. They repeated in sequences. 3 marks, then 5 marks, then 3 again. Mathematical, universal, prime numbers. "I think I have something," he said excitedly. He pulled himself closer to examine a particular sequence. The symbols were arranged in a spiral pattern. At the center, one symbol stood alone. It was different from the others. Simpler. Without thinking, Dae-hyun reached out to trace the symbol with his finger. His glove was bulky. He couldn't quite follow the lines properly. Frustrated, he made a decision that would change everything. He unsealed his right glove and pulled it off. "Dae-hyun, what are you doing?" Mina's voice was sharp with alarm. "Just for a second," he said. His bare hand touched the symbol. The archive exploded with light. Dae-hyun jerked back, but it was too late. The entire surface blazed like a newborn star. The symbols rearranged themselves, flowing like water across the hull. They formed new patterns, new shapes, and directly in front of him the solid surface simply opened. A doorway, perfect and circular. Beyond it, a corridor stretched into impossible distances. The geometry was wrong. The space inside should not fit within the structure's exterior dimensions. Light came from everywhere and nowhere. The corridor seemed to curve upward and downward simultaneously. "Dae-hyun," Taeyang shouted. "Get back to the shuttle now." But Dae-hyun could not move. He stared into the archive, and the archive stared back. He could feel it somehow. Feel it recognizing him, acknowledging him. The sensation was overwhelming and intimate, like being seen for the first time in his life. His hand still touched the hull. He pulled it away. The doorway sealed instantly. The lights faded. The symbols returned to their original positions. The archive was silent again, as if nothing had happened. Except everything had happened. The shuttle's sensors had recorded it all. The medical scanners had caught everything. When they returned to the station, chaos erupted. Scientists surrounded Dae-hyun, scanning him, questioning him, analyzing every molecule of his body. Mina took charge of the genetic analysis. She worked for 3 days straight, barely sleeping. Dae-hyun watched her work, too stunned to fully process what had occurred. His hand tingled where it had touched the archive. Not painfully. It felt like memory in his skin. On the 3rd day, Mina called him to her lab. Her face was pale. She looked like someone who had seen something impossible and could not unsee it. "I've run the analysis 40 times, she said quietly. "I keep getting the same result. It doesn't make sense, but the data doesn't lie." "What did you find?" Dae-hyun asked. Mina pulled up 2 holographic displays. One showed his DNA structure. The other showed the molecular composition of the archive's hull. She overlaid them. They matched. Not similar. Not close. Identical patterns at the quantum level. The archive's structure contained sequences that corresponded perfectly to human genetic code. "That's impossible," Dae-hyun whispered. "Humans have only been in space for 200 years. The archive is billions of years old." "I know," Mina said. "But the data is clear. The archive knows what human DNA looks like, and when you touched it with your bare skin, when it scanned your genetic code, it recognized you." Dae-hyun sat down heavily. His mind raced through possibilities, each more incredible than the last. "What does this mean?" "I don't know," Mina admitted. "But Dae-hyun, the archive didn't just recognize human DNA. It recognized your DNA specifically. There's something in your genetic code that matches even more precisely than standard human baseline. Something in your maternal line." The room felt too small suddenly, too cold. Dae-hyun looked at his hand, the one that had touched the archive. "It was waiting for me? Maybe, or waiting for someone like you. Someone with the right genetic key." Mina's voice was gentle. "The question is, what do we do now?" Before Dae-hyun could answer, alarms blared throughout the station. Velthax's voice boomed over the intercom. "Emergency meeting. All senior staff. Immediately." They rushed to the conference room. It was packed. Dr. Rixalan's tentacles were waving in agitation. Taeyang looked grim. Other coalition representatives argued in a dozen languages. Velthax slammed his limb on the table. "We have a situation. The archive has changed. It is now emitting a signal." A single repeating phrase. "Our translators have decoded it." He activated a holographic display. One word appeared, written in every coalition language simultaneously. "Speak." Dae-hyun stared at the word. The archive was no longer silent. It was waiting. Waiting for him to return. Waiting for him to speak. waiting for him to enter. The medical bay was cold and sterile. Daehyun lay on the examination table while machines hummed around him, scanning every part of his body. He had been here for 6 hours. Different specialists came and went, each one looking at him like he was a puzzle they needed to solve. Park Mina stood nearby, monitoring the data streams. Her eyes moved rapidly across multiple screens, analyzing genetic sequences. She had barely left the lab since the archive opened. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, but she refused to rest. "Your mitochondrial DNA is fascinating," Dr. Choi Yun-ho said, studying a holographic display of Daehyun's genetic structure. The young physician zoomed in on specific sequences. "The markers here in your maternal lineage, they're unusual. Old, really old." "How old?" Daehyun asked. "I don't know. Older than any human lineage we've mapped. It's like looking at a genetic fossil." Yun-ho frowned. "But that doesn't make sense. Humans evolved on Earth. We have a clear evolutionary path. This," he gestured at the display, "this suggests something else." Mina finally looked up from her screens. "I need to show you all something." She transferred her data to the main display. Everyone in the medical bay stopped to look. 2 genetic sequences appeared side by side. One was clearly Daehyun's DNA. The other was something else entirely. "The sequence on the right is from the archive's hull," Mina explained. "I extracted it from the molecular scan we took when Daehyun touched the surface. Watch what happens when I overlay them." She merged the 2 sequences. They locked together perfectly like pieces of a puzzle, but more than that, they enhanced each other. Where Daehyun's DNA had gaps or damaged sections, the archive's pattern filled them in. Where the archive's pattern was incomplete, Daehyun's DNA completed it. "They're complementary," Yun-ho breathed, "like a key in a lock." "Exactly," Mina said. "But here's what scares me. This isn't random. This is engineered. Someone designed this. Someone billions of years ago encoded a genetic key into the archive structure, and that same genetic pattern shows up in Daehyun's DNA." Hwang Taiyang entered the medical bay, carrying a data pad. The engineer looked troubled. "The Coalition Council is in an emergency session. They're debating what to do. Half of them want to seal the archive and leave. The other half want to send in armed teams." "That's stupid," Daehyun said, sitting up. "The archive isn't hostile. It opened for me. It's trying to communicate." "That's what worries them," Taeyang replied. "Why does it respond to humans? Why you specifically? What if it's a trap? What if whoever built it wanted to lure humans inside for some purpose we don't understand?" Daehyun wanted to argue, but he could not. The question had haunted him since he touched the archive. Why him? What made his genetic code special? Dr. Rixalan entered, his tentacles moving in patterns that suggested deep thought. "I have been reviewing the historical databases," the HFY scientist said. "My species has studied the archive longer than any other. We have theories, but they are disturbing." "Tell us," Mina said. Rixalan activated a holographic timeline. It stretched back billions of years. The archive is approximately 12 billion years old. The universe itself is less than 14 billion years old. This means the archive was built when the universe was very young, when the first galaxies were still forming. He highlighted a period near the beginning of the timeline. "We know almost nothing about this era. The cosmic background radiation tells us there were no complex elements then, no planets suitable for life. Yet someone built the archive during this time." "Maybe they came from another universe," Yun-ho suggested. "Perhaps," Rixalan said, "or perhaps they were the first. The very first intelligent species to evolve anywhere. They reached incredible heights of technology and knowledge. Then they disappeared. Every trace of them vanished except for the archive. And they left a genetic key coded into the structure," Mina added. "A key that matches human DNA." The implications hung heavy in the air. Daehyun felt dizzy thinking about it. "You're saying these beings knew humans would exist? Billions of years before we evolved?" "I'm saying something more disturbing," Rixalan said quietly. "What if they did not predict humans would exist? What if they ensured it?" The room fell silent. The only sound was the hum of medical equipment and the quiet beeping of monitors. "That's impossible," Taeyang said finally. "No one can engineer evolution across billions of years. The variables are too complex. Too much randomness." "Unless randomness is not as random as we think," Rixalan replied. "Unless someone with sufficient technology could nudge probability. Guide development," Leave genetic blueprints scattered across the galaxy, waiting for the right conditions to activate. Daehyun's mind reeled. You're saying the archive's builders created humanity? I am saying we cannot rule it out. The genetic match is too precise to be coincidence. Someone wanted humans to find the archive. Someone wanted you specifically to be able to open it. Mina shook her head. This is insane. We need more data. We need to understand what we're dealing with before anyone enters that structure. But the decision was taken out of their hands. Ambassador Velthax arrived with a security escort. His mantis body was rigid with authority. The council has decided. Kang Daehyun will enter the archive alone. Absolutely not, Mina snapped. We don't know what's inside. It could be dangerous, Ricky, which is why he goes alone, Velthax said coldly. We will not risk multiple lives. If the archive is hostile, we lose one person instead of many. I'm not a sacrifice, Daehyun said quietly. No, you are a volunteer. The council has reviewed the situation. The archive responds only to you. Only you can enter. You have two options. Volunteer, or we seal the archive permanently and leave. Daehyun looked at Mina. Her eyes pleaded with him to refuse. He looked at Taeyang, at Yunho, at Rixelon. They all wore expressions of worry and doubt, but he thought about the symbols on the archive's hull. The patterns that had called to something deep inside him. The feeling of being recognized, of being seen. Something in that structure was waiting for him. Something that had been waiting for 12 billion years. I'll go, he said. The preparation took 3 days. Taeyang designed a safety tether system, though everyone knew it probably would not work. If the archive wanted to keep Daehyun inside, no rope or cable would stop it. Still, they tried. It made them feel better to try. Mina created a biological monitoring system. Tiny sensors would track Daehyun's vital signs, neural activity, genetic changes. She designed a dead man's switch. If his heart stopped, automated systems would attempt to extract him. This is inadequate, she said on the night before the mission. They sat in the station's observation lounge, watching the archive float in the darkness. None of this will actually protect you. I know, Daehyun said. But I have to go. You know that. Why? Because some ancient structure opened a door? Because your DNA matches a pattern someone left billions of years ago? That doesn't mean you owe them anything. Daehyun considered this. She was right. He owed nothing to the archive's builders. They were long dead. Their civilization was dust. But he thought about his wife, June. About the mining accident that took her 5 years ago. About the way grief had hollowed him out, made him empty. He had thrown himself into his work, studying dead civilizations, trying to find meaning in the ruins of lost worlds. Maybe the archive was just another dead thing. But maybe it was something more. Maybe it was a message from the past, from people who knew they were dying but wanted to speak anyway, to be remembered, to matter. I study the dead, he said quietly. That's my job. I read their writing, examine their tools, try to understand who they were. The archive is the greatest archaeological find in history. How can I not enter it? Mina was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and took his hand. Come back, she said. Whatever you find in there, promise me you'll come back. I promise, he said, knowing he might not be able to keep it. The next morning, they suited him up. The monitoring equipment was integrated into his suit, the tether attached to a reinforced anchor point. Coalition observers from 24 species watched from the station's viewing galleries. The shuttle carried Daehyun to the archive. His heart pounded as they approached. The structure seemed to sense his arrival. The symbols began pulsing brighter, faster. They rearranged themselves, flowing across the hull like living things. The shuttle stopped 100 meters away. Daehyun activated his maneuvering jets and flew toward the archive alone. Behind him, the tether unreeled. He touched the hull with his bare hand. The doorway opened instantly. It was larger this time, more welcoming. The corridor beyond glowed with that impossible light. Daehyun could see the geometry shift and change, spaces that should not exist. I'm going in, he said into his radio. He heard Mina's voice, tight with fear. Good luck. Daehyun pushed forward into the archive. The moment he crossed the threshold, the doorway sealed behind him. He felt the tether go slack, then the connection broke entirely. All his monitoring equipment went dead. The radio filled with static. He was alone inside something 12 billion years old with no way to call for help. The corridor stretched ahead of him. Daehyun took a breath and started walking. His footsteps made no sound. The light came from the walls themselves, pulsing in rhythm with something he could almost feel, a heartbeat. The archive was alive in some way he did not understand. He walked for what felt like hours. The corridor never seemed to end. Sometimes gravity shifted and he found himself walking on walls or ceilings. Sometimes he passed through chambers filled with crystalline structures that hummed with data. Sometimes he saw symbols that made his head hurt to look at them. Then the corridor opened into a vast chamber. Dahyun stopped, his breath catching in his throat. The space was enormous, larger than anything that should fit inside the archive's exterior dimensions. And at the center floated something that made his genetic heritage suddenly make terrible, wonderful sense. The chamber was impossible. Dahyun stood at the entrance and tried to understand what he was seeing. The space curved in directions that should not exist. Walls met at angles that hurt his eyes. Light came from everywhere and nowhere, casting shadows that moved independently of their sources. At the center of the chamber, a crystalline structure floated. It was massive, the size of a small building, and it pulsed with inner light. Thousands of smaller crystals orbited around it like a solar system made of glass and starlight. Dahyun walked forward. With each step, information flooded his mind. Not words, not images, pure knowledge, flowing directly into his consciousness. He staggered, overwhelmed by the sensation. Languages he had never heard filled his thoughts. He suddenly understood the grammar and syntax of civilizations that died before Earth formed. Mathematical concepts that human science had not discovered became clear to him. The history of species he never knew existed downloaded into his memory like files being copied to a computer. He reached out to steady himself against a wall. The moment his hand touched the surface, the flow of information intensified. He gasped, falling to his knees. The knowledge came faster now, too fast. His human brain was not designed to process data at this speed, but somehow he did not break. The archive was careful. It adjusted its methods, finding ways to feed him information that his mind could handle. It was teaching him, patiently, gently. Dahyun did not know how long he knelt there. Hours, days, time felt strange in this place. Eventually, the flood of knowledge slowed to a manageable stream. He could think again. He stood up, his legs shaking. Around him, the smaller crystals began to move. They formed patterns in the air, creating holographic displays that showed things Dahyun's ancestors had never imagined. He saw galaxies in their infancy, stars being born and dying. He saw civilizations rising from primitive beginnings, reaching heights of technology and culture, then fading into history. But one civilization appeared more than others. The crystals showed him beings who looked almost human. 2 legs, 2 arms, 1 head. They were taller than modern humans, with features that seemed to blend every ethnicity that would ever exist. They built cities of light and mathematics. They mastered physics in ways that made current science look like children playing with blocks. These were the architects, the builders of the archive. Dahyun understood this without being told. The knowledge was simply there in his mind now, clear and certain. The architects had existed 12 billion years ago, when the universe was young and wild. They were the first intelligent species to evolve, emerging in a galaxy barely cool enough to support complex matter. They developed alone with no other species to guide them or compete with them. They grew rapidly. In a few million years, they went from discovering fire to building structures that could survive the end of time. They learned to manipulate space and time. They created technology that could reshape reality itself, but they discovered something that terrified them. The crystals showed Dahyun the truth. The universe was not eternal. It operated in cycles. Every few trillion years, everything ended. Not just stars dying and galaxies fading. Complete ontological reset. The fundamental laws of physics themselves changed. Constants shifted. Particles that existed in one cycle might not exist in the next. Nothing survived these resets. No matter, no energy, no information. Everything simply stopped existing. And then a new universe began with entirely different rules. The architects could see it coming. They had billions of years still, but they knew their time was limited. No matter how advanced they became, they could not survive the reset. The mathematics were absolute. When the cycle ended, they would end with it. So they decided to cheat. The archive was their solution. Dahyun watched the crystals show him its construction. The architects poured everything they knew into this structure. Every scientific discovery, every philosophical insight, every piece of art and music and literature they had ever created. They encoded it all into crystalline data storage that could theoretically survive anything. But information alone was not enough. They wanted continuity. They wanted someone to receive their message, someone to carry on their work. So they encoded their genetic pattern into the archive itself, not as instructions to build clones, something more subtle. They scattered fragments of their DNA across dozens of galaxies, embedding it into the basic chemistry of stellar nurseries and planetary formation. They could not force evolution, but they could nudge it, give it templates to work with. If intelligent life evolved again in the next cycle, it might randomly develop genetic patterns similar to the architects. And if that happened, if by chance some species ended up with DNA close enough to the original template, the archive would recognize them. Daehyun felt tears on his face. He understood now. Humans were not created by the architects. Humans evolved naturally on Earth through billions of years of normal evolution. But the architects had seeded the galaxy with the building blocks that made human-like life possible. It was probability manipulation on a cosmic scale. Plant enough seeds and something might grow. Out of trillions of possible evolutionary paths, one led to humans. One led to a species whose DNA echoed patterns laid down 12 billion years ago by beings who wanted desperately not to be forgotten. We are them, Daehyun whispered. Not copies, not children. We're the echo, the possibility they preserved. The central crystal pulsed brightly as if acknowledging his understanding. The smaller crystals rearranged themselves, forming a path deeper into the chamber. Daehyun followed. He entered smaller rooms, each one filled with more crystalline data structures. Each room taught him something new. Physics that made faster-than-light travel look primitive. Medical technology that could cure any disease. Energy generation methods that could power civilizations for millions of years. The architect's knowledge was staggering, but it was incomplete. Daehyun noticed gaps in the data. Missing sections. Corrupted files. The architects had run out of time. They had encoded as much as they could before the end came, but they could not finish. Some of their most important work was fragmentary. Theories half-explained. Experiments unfinished. Technologies partially designed but never built. They had died in the middle of their greatest achievements, and the archive preserved their incomplete legacy. Daehyun spent what felt like days exploring the chambers. The archive continued teaching him, adjusting to his capacity to learn. His brain rewired itself to accommodate the new information. Neural pathways formed that should not exist in human physiology. He was changing, becoming something more than human but not quite something else. Eventually, he reached the deepest chamber. It was small, intimate. At its center stood a single crystal, different from all the others. It glowed with warm light, almost alive. Daehyun approached it carefully. The moment he came within arm's reach, a hologram activated. A woman appeared before him. She looked human, but Daehyun knew she was an architect. Her features blended Asian, African, European, features that would not exist for billions of years. She was beautiful and sad and tired. She spoke. The archive translated her words directly into Daehyun's mind. "Hello?" she said, and her voice was gentle. "If you are seeing this, then our gamble succeeded. You exist. We did not." Daehyun wanted to respond, but he could not. This was a recording, ancient beyond measure. The woman smiled sadly. "I am Architect Keeper Lyanna. I was chosen to record this final message because I have the most skill with temporal linguistics. I hope the archive's translation systems are working properly. I hope you can understand me." She paused as if gathering her thoughts. "We knew we were dying. Our entire civilization, everything we built, all our knowledge and art and dreams. The cycle was ending and we could not stop it. We tried everything. We bent time. We broke space. We rebuilt ourselves as energy, as thought, as quantum probability. Nothing worked. The reset was absolute." Her image flickered slightly, showing the age of the recording. "So we built this archive. We filled it with everything we were, everything we knew, and we scattered genetic templates across the new universe, hoping that evolution might recreate something like us. It was a desperate hope. The probability was almost zero, but almost zero is not zero." Lyanna stepped forward, her holographic eyes seeming to look directly at Daehyun. "You are us, and we are you, across a distance so vast that causality itself becomes meaningless. We could not save ourselves, but we saved the possibility of you. The knowledge here is yours by right of inheritance. You are our children, born from nothing but probability and hope. She gestured around at the chamber. Use what we have given you. Finish what we could not complete. Break the cycle if you can. Become more than we were. And remember us, not as gods, not as creators. Remember us as ancestors who loved you before you existed. The hologram flickered again. Lyanna smiled one last time. We called this project Archive, but perhaps it is better called Hope. Whatever you call it, it is yours now. We trust you with our legacy. We trust you with the future. She faded slowly, the light dimming. Goodbye, children. Goodbye from the deep past. We will never meet, but we will always be connected. Live well, live better than we did. Make the universe remember that we all existed. The hologram vanished. Daehyun stood alone in the silent chamber. Tears flowed freely down his face now. He understood everything. The weight of 12 billion years pressed down on him. The architects had died so long ago that their civilization was less than a footnote in cosmic history. But they had reached across unimaginable time to touch him, to speak to him. He placed his hand on the central crystal. Knowledge flooded his mind one last time, the location of other archives scattered across the universe, instructions for how to use the technology they had left behind, warnings about dangers they had discovered, hopes for what humanity and other species might accomplish. And at the very core of the data, one final piece of information: the architects had discovered something important before they died. Something about the cycles, a potential way to survive them. But the research was incomplete. They had run out of time before solving the puzzle. The archive contained the beginning of the solution, but someone would need to finish it. Daehyun felt the archive releasing him. The knowledge stopped flowing. His mind was full, crammed with more information than any human had ever held. It was too much. He could feel it burning through his consciousness, overwhelming his neural pathways. He stumbled back toward the entrance. The corridor appeared before him, leading back to the doorway. He walked, his vision blurring, his thoughts fragmenting under the weight of alien knowledge. Behind him, the crystals pulsed one final time as if saying goodbye. Daehyun reached the doorway. It opened automatically. He fell through into the void, and the last thing he remembered was the cold of space and the distant lights of the research station before everything went black. Daehyun woke up screaming. His mind was on fire. Knowledge burned through his thoughts like acid, corroding the boundaries between memories and information. He could see mathematical equations when he closed his eyes. He could hear the death songs of civilizations that died before his species learned to walk upright. "Hold him down," someone shouted. Hands pressed against his shoulders. He fought them without meaning to, his body convulsing. "Sedative isn't working," another voice said. Park Mina's voice tight with fear. "His neural pathways are overclocked. He's processing information faster than his brain can handle." Daehyun forced his eyes open. The medical bay ceiling swam above him. Dr. Choi Yunho's face appeared, concerned and frightened. Mina leaned over him from the other side, her hand on his forehead. "Daehyun, can you hear me?" she asked. He tried to speak, but words came out in languages that had no names, ancient tongues from dead worlds. He could not control which language his brain chose. Finally, he managed Korean. "How long?" 3 days, Mina said. "The archive ejected you. We found you floating outside its hull, unconscious. Your vital signs were all wrong. Your brain activity was off the charts. We thought we were going to lose you. 3 days. Daehyun remembered entering the archive, remembered the chambers and the crystals and Lyanna's hologram. But time had no meaning inside. He could have been there for 3 minutes or 3 years. What happened inside? Yunho asked, adjusting the medical scanner. What did you see? Daehyun tried to explain, but the knowledge in his head made it difficult to form simple sentences. Every word connected to chains of information. He said crystal, and his mind flooded with data about crystalline data storage, quantum entanglement in silicon matrices, the chemical composition of architect technology. He could not make it stop. "I can't," he gasped. Too much information." Mina and Yunho exchanged worried looks. They ran more scans. Daehyun lay there, trying to control his thoughts, trying to separate his own memories from the archive's downloads. Over the next week, they learned the truth. The archive had fundamentally changed Daehyun. His brain had rewired itself to accommodate the massive amount of information it now contained. New neural pathways formed overnight. His synapses fired at speeds that should have caused seizures but somehow did not. He could recall perfect technical specifications for technologies humanity had never imagined. He understood physics that would not be discovered for centuries. He spoke languages from civilizations billions of years dead. The knowledge was killing him. His brain was burning itself out trying to process everything. "You have maybe 6 months," Mina told him quietly one night. They sat alone in his room. "Your neural tissue is degrading. The information density is too high. Human brains were not meant to hold this much data." Daehyun had known this already. He could feel himself dying. The archive's gift was also a curse. "Then we need to work fast." "Work on what?" Mina asked. "Finishing what the architects started," Daehyun said. They left instructions, ways to save civilizations from the cosmic reset. But the research is incomplete. Someone needs to finish it. He told her everything. About Lyanna and the architects and the cycles of universal death and rebirth. About the genetic templates scattered across galaxies. About how humans were not created but were probability made flesh. The echo of a dead civilization's desperate hope. Mina listened, her face growing paler with each revelation. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. "This changes everything," she said finally. "If the Coalition learns that the universe will eventually reset, that everything will end no matter what we do." "Panic," Daehyun agreed. "Chaos. Some species will give up. Others will fight over resources. It will destroy the Coalition. So what do we do?" Daehyun leaned back against his pillow. His head throbbed with overlapping thoughts. "We share the knowledge carefully. We focus on the useful technology first. The medical advances. The energy systems. Things that can improve life now, and we work on the survival problem quietly." But it was not that simple. The Coalition Council demanded answers. Ambassador Velthax convened an emergency session. Daehyun was required to testify about what he found inside the archive. He stood before representatives of 47 species and told them a version of the truth. He described the architects and their technology. He explained that the archive contained vast knowledge that could benefit everyone. He demonstrated by reciting complex physics equations and explaining engineering principles no one in the Coalition had discovered. But he did not tell them about the cosmic cycles. He did not mention that everything would eventually end. Some truths were too dangerous to share without preparation. Not everyone was satisfied with his incomplete answers. General Nam Jiwoo, a high-ranking human military officer, cornered him after the session. "You are holding back information," she said bluntly. "I can see it. The archive told you something you are not sharing." "I shared everything relevant," Daehyun said carefully. "Relevant to whom?" Jiwoo demanded. "You have knowledge that could give humanity an advantage over other species. You have technology that could make us the dominant power in the Coalition. And you are just giving it away?" "The archive's knowledge belongs to everyone," Daehyun said. "The architects left it for whoever found it. That happened to be a human, but the gift is for all species." Jiwoo's expression hardened. "You are naive. Other species will not be so generous if they gain such advantages. You should think about your own people first." She left before Daehyun could respond, but her words troubled him. He knew some humans would think like Jiwoo. Some would want to hoard the archive's knowledge, use it as a weapon or bargaining tool. Over the following weeks, the Coalition fractured along these lines. Some species demanded full access to everything Daehyun knew. Others wanted the archive sealed and forgotten. Human representatives were split between those who supported sharing and those who wanted humanity to benefit first. Chancellor Lee Bora, the senior human diplomat, took a moderate stance. "We must be wise in how we share this knowledge," she told the council. "Too much too fast will destabilize our societies, but refusing to share will breed resentment and conflict. We need a measured approach." She proposed creating a new organization, the Keepers, individuals from multiple species who would receive portions of the archive's knowledge, distributing the burden so no single person bore the full weight. The proposal faced immediate opposition. Who would choose the Keepers? How would the knowledge be divided? What prevented Keepers from using their information for personal gain? While politicians debated, Daehyun was dying. His condition worsened daily. Headaches became constant. He had seizures that left him unconscious for hours. His memory fragmented, mixing his own experiences with those of long-dead architects. Mina worked frantically to save him. She collaborated with Yunho and the best neuroscientists in the coalition. They studied the changes in Daehyun's brain, trying to understand how the archive's knowledge had integrated itself. "I have an idea," she said one night, bursting into his room with excitement in her eyes. "It is experimental, dangerous, but it might work." She explained her plan. Using archive-derived technology, they could create a neural interface device. It would allow Daehyun to transfer knowledge directly from his mind to others. The process would reduce the information density in his brain, relieving the pressure that was killing him. "You would basically be sharing your mind," she said, "creating a network of connected consciousnesses. The knowledge would be distributed across multiple people, and you could all access it when needed." "Like a hive mind?" Daehyun asked. "No, not exactly. Everyone would keep their individual identity, but you would be able to share thoughts and memories with others in the network. It would be intimate, strange, and possibly dangerous. We do not know what the long-term effects might be." Daehyun did not hesitate. "Let's do it." Dr. Han Sujin, a neurosurgeon with experience in experimental procedures, agreed to perform the operation. She was a precise woman with steady hands and a reputation for attempting procedures other doctors called impossible. "I have never done anything like this," she admitted to Daehyun before the surgery. "I will essentially be installing alien technology into your brain. The success rate is impossible to calculate." "I trust you," Daehyun said simply. The surgery took 16 hours. Sujin and her team worked carefully, integrating the neural interface device with Daehyun's existing brain structures. The device was tiny, barely visible on scans, but its effects were profound. When Daehyun woke up, he could feel the device humming in his mind. It felt like having an extra sense, a new way to perceive the world. The crushing pressure of information had eased. The knowledge was still there, but it no longer felt like it was burning him alive. "It worked," Mina said, relief flooding her face. "Your neural stress indicators have dropped significantly. How do you feel?" "Different," Daehyun said. "Like I have room to breathe again." "Good, because we have volunteers. People who want to join the network. To become keepers." Over the next months, 53 individuals underwent the same procedure. They came from 32 different species. Scientists, engineers, philosophers, artists. Each one received a neural interface. Each one connected to the network. Daehyun transferred portions of the archive's knowledge to each keeper. Medical information to doctors. Engineering principles to builders. Scientific theories to researchers. The knowledge flowed between minds like water finding its level. The experience was profound and unsettling. Daehyun could feel the other keepers in his thoughts. Not controlling him. Not even speaking to him constantly. Just present, a sense of other minds nearby, accessible if needed. Park Mina was among the first volunteers. When she connected to the network, Daehyun felt her consciousness brush against his. It was intimate in a way he had not expected. He could sense her emotions, her memories, her love for him that she had never quite expressed in words. "This is strange," she said, and he heard her both with his ears and in his mind. "I can feel you thinking." "I know," he replied. "I can feel you too." They stood there for a moment, connected in a way no humans had been before. Then Mina smiled. "Well, this will make working together easier." The Keeper Network changed everything. With knowledge distributed across multiple minds, they began solving problems that had stymied coalition scientists for decades. They designed new technologies. They cured diseases. They made advances in physics and chemistry that seemed like magic to those outside the network, but not everyone celebrated. General Jiwoo called it an abomination. "You have made yourself into something inhuman," she told Daehyun. "You and your keepers. You are not natural anymore." "Natural is overrated," Daehyun replied. "The architects were natural once. They evolved just like we did. Then they chose to become more. We are making the same choice." Jiwoo formed a resistance movement, the Purist Front. They believed the archive's technology was corrupting humanity, making people dependent on alien knowledge instead of developing their own solutions. The movement grew rapidly, spreading to other species who felt the same way. They protested outside research facilities. They published manifestos warning of the dangers of archive technology. Daehyun tried to understand their perspective. In some ways, they were right. The archive's knowledge was changing the galaxy faster than societies could adapt. Not everyone was comfortable with that pace of change, but he also knew they could not stop. The knowledge existed now. It was out in the world. Sealing it away would not make it disappear. The only path was forward, adapting as best they could. 5 years after Daehyun first entered the archive, he married Mina. They had a simple ceremony, attended by keepers and non-keepers alike. Hwang Taeyang served as best man. Chancellor Lee Bora officiated. Their daughter Somin was born 2 years later. Somin was remarkable from birth. At 3 months old, she solved a puzzle meant for 5-year-olds. At 2 years, she spoke in complete sentences and asked questions about quantum mechanics. By age 5, she was designing improvements to archive-derived technology that stumped adult engineers. Park Mina ran genetic tests on their daughter. The results were both expected and unsettling. Somin had inherited fragments of archive knowledge encoded in her DNA. Not the full burden her father carried, but enough to give her intuitive understanding of concepts that others struggled to learn. She's the first generation, Mina said, studying the results, the beginning of something new. If keepers have children, those children will inherit portions of the knowledge genetically. In a few generations, humanity will be fundamentally different. Daehyun watched Somin play with holographic building blocks, constructing structures that followed architectural principles she should not know. Is that wrong? He asked. To change the species like this? I don't know, Mina admitted. Evolution usually takes millions of years. We're compressing it into decades. The ethical implications are staggering, but they could not stop it. Other keeper children were born across the coalition. Each one showed similar abilities. They learned faster, understood more intuitively, and displayed talents that seemed impossible for their age. Some called them miracles. Others called them mistakes. 10 years after the archive opened, the galaxy had transformed in ways no one anticipated. Archive technology powered every major city. Diseases that once killed millions were extinct. Faster-than-light travel had improved so much that crossing the galaxy took weeks instead of years. The coalition expanded to 70 species as new civilizations were discovered and welcomed, but tensions remained. The Purist Front had grown into a significant political force. They had representatives in the Coalition Council now, advocating for limits on archive technology usage. Their leader, Commander Yu Hana, gave speeches that resonated with many who felt overwhelmed by rapid change. We are losing ourselves, she said at rallies. Every new technology makes us more dependent. Every advancement takes us further from what we were. The keepers have made themselves into something alien. Do we want that for our children? Do we want to stop being human? Daehyun attended one of her speeches. He stood in the back of the crowd listening. Hana was a compelling speaker. Her arguments were not entirely wrong. The galaxy was changing faster than many could handle. Some people felt left behind, unable to keep up with advances they did not understand. After the speech, he approached her. I would like to talk, he said. Hana's security detail tensed, but she waved them back. The famous Kang Daehyun, the man who opened the archive. You've made yourself into a living god. I'm not a god, Daehyun said. I'm just someone who touched something old and got changed by it. Exactly my point. You let alien technology change you. You chose to stop being human. I chose to survive, Daehyun corrected. The knowledge the archive gave me was killing me. Becoming a keeper saved my life. Would you prefer I had died? Hana's expression softened slightly. No, but I wish you had found a different way. One that did not require transforming yourself into something other. They talked for hours. Daehyun shared his experiences inside the archive. He told her about Lyanna and the architects and the desperate hope that led to humanity's existence. He explained about the cosmic cycles and the incomplete research that might save civilizations from universal death. That's why we can't stop, he said. The architects ran out of time. They couldn't finish the work. If we stop now, we waste their sacrifice. We waste the billions of years it took for us to exist and find their message. Hana was quiet for a long time. What you're describing is a burden no species should carry. The knowledge that everything ends. That the universe itself will die. How do people live with that? The same way people always lived with mortality, Daehyun said. By making the time we have meaningful. By building things that matter even if they don't last forever. But Hana was not convinced. The Purist Front continued growing. And then, 15 years after the archive opened, they made their move. A coordinated attack struck research facilities across 6 star systems. The targets were places where keepers worked on archive-derived projects. The attacks were not designed to kill, but to destroy equipment and data. The message was clear: stop advancing or face resistance. The Coalition Council convened an emergency session. Some members demanded military action against the Purist Front. Others called for negotiations. The unity that had held the coalition together was fracturing. Daehyun stood before the council and made a proposal. Let me talk to them. Let me show them what we've discovered. The Purists fear what they don't understand. Maybe understanding will ease that fear. Chancellor Lee Bora, now elderly but still sharp, supported him. Violence will only breed more violence. We must find common ground. But General Nam Jiwoo, now a council member herself, disagreed. The Purists are terrorists. You do not negotiate with terrorists. You eliminate them. The vote was close, but Daehyun's proposal won. He would meet with Purist leadership and attempt to find a peaceful solution. The meeting took place on a neutral station. Yuhana arrived with a security detail. Daehyun came alone, though Mina and other keepers were nearby, connected through the neural network if he needed support. You came, Hana said, surprised. I said I would, Daehyun replied. You're afraid. I understand that. Change is frightening. What we've become, what the next generation will be, it's scary because it's unknown. It's not natural, Hana insisted. Evolution should take millions of years. You're forcing changes in decades. The architects did the same thing, Daehyun said. They evolved naturally, then chose to guide their own development. They became more than biology intended. We're following that path. And look what happened to them. They're extinct. They died when the universe reset, Daehyun corrected. Not because they advanced too quickly. In fact, they might have survived if they'd had more time to finish their research. That's what we're trying to complete. A way to survive the next reset. He made a decision then. A risk. He reached out with his mind through the Keeper network and touched Hana's consciousness. Not invading her thoughts, just showing her what he carried. The weight of archive knowledge. The memories of civilizations long dead. The loneliness of being the bridge between ancient past and uncertain future. Hana gasped. For a moment she could feel what Daehyun felt every day. The burden. The responsibility. The hope mixed with fear. Then the connection broke and she stumbled backward. What did you do? She demanded, but her voice shook. I showed you the truth, Daehyun said. Being a keeper is not power. It's responsibility. Every day I carry the memories of people who died before my world existed. Every day I work to honor their sacrifice by finishing what they started. It's not about being a god. It's about being a good ancestor to whoever comes after us.